Love, Paul tells us, suffers long and is kind. It's the first thing he says about love. I said in the first talk, we are created in the image of the crucified Christ to be male and female. If you will, the thing ultimately about these energies in our life, they are two ways of suffering what it means to be human. There is a way, and there's a huge variety of ways to suffer as a man. There's a huge variety of ways to suffer as a woman. But the problem with our culture is our culture can't talk about suffering very well. We don't talk about suffering very well because we oftentimes have a pleasure ethic that everything, self-fulfillment and all of this is about happiness, the pursuit of happiness and all like that. And in fact, we don't do a very good job of teaching people that they're going to suffer and how to suffer. And then we do a very bad job on supporting people in their suffering. I remember when I served a large parish, we had 120 deaths in the 9 years I was there. That's more than one a month. So a lot of dying people, and a lot of people in nursing homes. And I don't know if you've ever spent much time in a nursing home. They're not pleasant. Why are they not pleasant? Well, people are sick and they're lonely. Why are they lonely? Because nobody visits. Why does nobody visit? Who wants to go hang out with old sick people? I mean, I know, and that's kind of how it was. And so we worked really hard at trying to organize a ministry in our parish because there was nothing wrong with any nursing home that 75 visitors a day couldn't make a difference with. You know, like, how do you become the kind of culture that can support people when they're old and dying? How do we become the kind of culture that can support children, like that? And what do we do? In both cases, minimum wage workers without training and you're going to get all kinds of problems. It's only love, but love has to be willing to suffer. I've had people who get very upset about the suffering of their parents when they die, and they're dying. He doesn't know me, and someone has to change his diaper. I don't want to suffer like that, so let's have euthanasia. That's the American answer. Kill him. Stanley Hauerwas at Duke said that's always modernity's answer, death, instead of dealing with the suffering. The truth was, when I came into this world, I didn't recognize you either, and you changed my diaper, I would say to my mother. I'm going to probably leave the same way, not recognizing someone and having them change my diaper. It's just part of being human. It's hard, it's miserable, and it's real. I wish that I had a chapter in Genesis about changing Abraham, or something in there. These were old sick guys. There's things kind of going on. People have had to do this through the ages. My grandparents, on my mom's side, they died in their children's homes, not in a nursing home. They worked it out. My granddaddy, Campbell, down in South End, he had several heart attacks. Every time he'd have one, they'd trot him off to the hospital. He told my mom when he's come to stay into her, he said, look, everybody I know is gone. I'm ready to die. He said, quit calling the hospital. I die and they bring me back. I'm ready to go. Mama said, okay. And so one day in her living room after lunch, sitting in my daddy's recliner chair, Mama said she was laying down. Suddenly she heard him take a sharp breath. She looked over. She thought, he's having a heart attack. And she went over and sat by him and held his hand and let him go, as he had asked. I would love to have one of my daughters, if my wife's not there, with me when I go. At some point, it's okay to go. But you shouldn't have to die alone. That's one of the things I learned with hospice, is that with hospice we were there helping people go through dying. But we were in the situation where you have to pay people to do what once upon a time families did. And this is, what is it to be male and female? We have to teach one another. We teach one another with love, and the love begins with suffering. They used to tell me that I had really terrible homilies at weddings because this was my basic message. But, I'm sorry, but in an Orthodox wedding, we crown you as martyrs. And I just tended to try and explain that to people. I did an article on the blog a few years ago called Marriage is Lifelong Suffering. It's one of my most visited articles. So I know it's true. It just is true. And if, you will say about the Western traditional thing, in sickness and health, in whatever, all this, I promised all that stuff. And orthodoxy, we don't make any promises, so we don't have to perjure ourselves on our wedding day. But those promises are still true. Sickness, poor, and poverty, wealth, whatever, it involves suffering. If you have children, it is first off, you cannot give birth to a child without suffering. Sorry, it's part of the package. And that's where it begins. But the other side of it is we are hardwired for it. We are hardwired for it. Something has gone wrong when we don't love our children. We're hardwired for it. We share that with the rest of the animal kingdom. These things matter, and they ought to be supported, never scoffed at, never ridiculed, never treated like some secondary choice that you gave up your career, now you've got these rugrats. I mean, gee whiz, nobody ever at their deathbed said, I wished I'd spent more hours in the office. What do people talk about on their deathbed? They talk about family. They talk about friends. They talk about relationships. This was what mattered. This is what matters. And relationships are hard. We suffer. We offend. We have to forgive. This is why Paul takes the church into the lesson of love. Love suffers long and is kind. Love does not envy. Love does not parade itself, is not puffed up, does not behave rudely. I remember messing something up once as my first year as an Orthodox priest, had to do with a wedding. And I had to self-report, and I called the bishop to tell him this mistake I'd made. And Archbishop Dimitri, of blessed memory, he said to me, Father Stephen, he said, whenever there's a question about a marriage, call me first. And then I'd explain to him what I'd done and why I'd done it, and it was pastoral, da-da-da. But anyway, his response to it was, you and I will have to bear this one. He could have suspended me in the situation. He didn't. He simply said, you and I will have to bear this one. And I knew exactly what he meant. He was suffering with me. He didn't tell me I was right, or didn't tell, oh, it doesn't matter. He didn't say anything like that. He just suffered with me. That's when you hear some of us talk about him the way we do, that's because he treated all of his priests like that, whether we deserved it or not. He suffered with us. He was a father. St. Silouan talked about his own father, that he had one day brought a sandwich on a fast day, but it had meat. And he said, and his father ate it anyway. And he waited 9 months, I think it was, before he told him that it tasted like carrion the day he brought it in because it was a fast day. But he said, my father waited 9 months before he, gently rebuked me about it. He said, I never had a spiritual father as effective as my own father. Such tenderness of heart, long-suffering, kind, not envious, not parading itself, not puffed up. What does it mean to be a man? It is all of these things. What does it mean to be a woman? It is all of these things. And then what does it mean to be a church? It means to be these things and to be these things for one another, especially you got somebody who's kind of going through it confusedly or going through it badly. Tolerate them, love them, give them a chance. We only get this life once, and the grading is based on love. The grading is based on love. It's not based on having gotten it right. So it does not rejoice in iniquity, but rejoices in the truth, bears all things, believes all things, hopes all things, endures all things. You know, when parishes work, this is how they work. When ecclesiology works, this is how it works. When a marriage works, this is how it works. This is it. This is when a human being works, and when we flourish, this is what flourishing looks like. It's just love. It's not really harder than that, and that's the most difficult thing there is. The lines and structures of our energies, of the hierarchies around us, we frequently distort them, but it's to be borne in mind that the true lines, the true hierarchies, the true energies around us are the divine energies, and they are love. They are love. So when we struggle with these things, look towards love. Let God, in his mercy and in the example of Christ, show you that path of love. Glory to God. Good. We'll call that a talk. And